What's up guys, DevBird here. In today's episode we are going to be doing damage pop-up text. So right now we have our enemy here, but when we attack him, and I just have a new enemy just to let you guys know that this is a enemy and not like an NPC or something. So I just swapped that out real quick, and this enemy here, all he does is just sit there, do nothing. That's okay for now. What we want to do right now is that we want to know when we actually hit this guy, and usually how you know is damage text popping up. At least for this RPG, that's what's going to happen. And later on we'll do things like a hit animation or something like that. But yeah, we'll just be doing damage pop-up text for now. So let's get started with that. Alright, so let's get started with the UI portion of our tutorial. So first, all our enemies are going to need canvases, and these canvases will hold the information, that is the damage that they're taking. So we're going to add a canvas to our enemy here. So we have our test enemy. I'm going to add a canvas to him. And you're probably going to want to make a prefab out of your enemy, and in order to do that, you can just drag and drop your test enemy into a folder in your project. I'm going to drop into my prefab folder. Now he's a prefab, so that's good. So we have our test enemy here, and we have our canvas. But this canvas takes up our whole screen, and we don't want that. We want it to be floating above him. And in order to do that, we're going to change the screen space overlay to world space, and that lets the game know that this isn't a canvas. It's going to be like our UI, but rather it's going to be a canvas that's going to exist in our world. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a text, and we're going to resize this a bit. Let's make this a little bit smaller, like so. Let's make it like about this big. And we have our text here, and we're going to scale that up. So we're going to change the width and the height so it fits just about our canvas here. And then we are going to scale this down after we reset the position X and Y to 0, 0. And so now it's going to be centered on our enemy. And then we're going to take this text, we're going to align it in the middle there. And then we are going to scale the text font size up a bit, just that it's a bit crispier text. And then we're going to scale this down. And you notice how the text is like behind stuff. It's because it's existing inside of our world. So the way we can fix that real quick is we're going to add a new sorting layer and call this the text layer. And then we're going to assign the text layer to our canvas here. And now it will be above everything at all times. See? So we have our canvas here. It's not quite the right size, so we're just going to scale it down some more. And let's put in some test numbers. Let's say like plus 347 damage. It's a little bit still too big. That's about right for me. And then we are going to move this canvas up just a smidge, and that looks fine. And then we can adjust the color to white, and let's add a shadow onto it, and let's increase the effect color of it so you can see the shadow just a bit better. So here we are, we have our test canvas and our text. Let me just rename this to like damage text or something. And so now we can get rid of this, and we can start coding in how to change that number. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we need to go into our base enemy script here, because all enemies are going to have the ability to take damage, so therefore all enemies will need to have their damage text pop up. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get a reference to our damage text here, but we don't want to have to manually set it because that's just a lot of work. We want these things to be automatic to improve our workflow as much as possible. You don't want to have to manually set things. So let's create a private text, and we need to be using the Unity Engine UI. So I'm going to hit Alt-Enter and go down to using UnityEngine.ui. It's going to add it for us. And we'll call this the damage text UI. And so how do we set this reference? Well, we're going to go to our start. So when the enemy spawns, it's going to get the reference for us. So let's make damage text UI equal to, we're going to get component in children, and we're going to get the text component. So now we have a reference to our text. And what this basically does is it's going to search all of the children within this game object, and it's going to keep going until it finds a damage text. Or it's going to keep going until it finds the text. A text component. And so you want to make sure that there's no S here. Not get components, we just want one component. So also you have to make sure that this is the only text component on this game object here. So now that we have our damage text and the reference to it, just to make sure that it works, we're going to debug log it real quick. Debug.log, and then we are going to debug.log the text damage UI's name. So when I hit start, what should happen after it compiles is that it should return the damage text.name. So we properly get the damage text through this function, or this line of code here. So we can get rid of that. And the next thing we need to do is that whenever we take damage, we need to update the damage text UI. And the style or way I'm going to do that, we're seeing this error here because of the has to do with like the animator. Yeah, this happens sometimes. I just have to restart my Unity to fix it, but that's fine for now. We don't have to use the animator. So the style that which I'm going to do this in is that every time our enemy takes damage, a text will pop up, the damage number. But if we take damage again, it's going to increase that number and not come up with like a new instance. And once the enemy has stopped taking damage, the number will go away. But for now, let's just have the damage pop up first. So we don't need to have this line of code anymore. And so whenever we take damage, we need to create a variable. This variable will be a float. We'll call this damage amount text. And the damage amount text is going to be equal to the amount of damage that we're taking. So the reason why I'm doing this, making a new variable for this, is because later on we'll have it be equal to like the total number of damage you've taken so far. But for now, this is fine. So damage amount text is going to be equal to the amount of damage that we just took. And now we need to make the damage text UI. Damage text UI dot text equal to the damage amount text, and make it toString. And so now it's gonna show the same number over and over again, but that's fine. So we're just going to hit this guy, and you see the 25 pop up, and it's going to keep saying 25. And so now what we need to do is we need to make that 25 go up to 50, then 75, and then 100. So let's see how we can do that. Alright, so we're going to get rid of this part here, because essentially we're creating a new variable every time we call this function, and the value is going to get reset. So in order to fix that, we're going to get rid of this and pretty much just move it up over here. So make a private, oops, it's not copy pasting properly. There we go. So we're going to move this up there, and we're going to get rid of this. And so now the damage amount text, basically what we can do is we can say plus equals the damage, and the damage will now get added onto the damage amount text, which then what's going to happen is it's going to remember that amount of damage that it took. So we can now go and test this, and I'm just going to pick this guy up real quick. I'm going to hit him, and hit him again. Let's go to 50, and 75, and then he dies. So we have the damage being displayed now on top of his head. There's still a lot of things we need to do. First of all, if the enemy stops taking damage, then we want it to disappear, and we also want some animations to play to make it a little more fancy, because right now it's pretty boring looking. So let's make the damage number disappear if we stop taking damage for, let's say, a whole second. Alright, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to go to our canvas on our test enemy here, and we're going to create an animator. So let's create our animator here, and basically in order to make the text go away, we want to fade it out. We don't want to just like set it the object into inactive, because this doesn't look good. We want to fade it out so it looks nice and pretty. So we have our animator here, but we need to have an animator controller. So let's go to our animators folder, and let's just create a folder for this, and call it damage pop ups, and then let's create a animator controller. We'll call this damage text controller, and we are going to drag in the damage text controller onto our canvas. And the reason why we're putting it on our canvas is because, well, our damage text has a lot of stuff on it, and also putting it on the parent of the object that we're going to animate gives us a little bit more control over it. So now we have our damage text controller. We go to our animation window, and if you don't have this, just go to your window and open up the animation. So what we do next is we can now create a animator, or animation, I should say, and we'll call this fade out, because that's what it's gonna do. And I just like to lower this to 12, so the animation plays a little bit slower. Okay, so now we're going to start recording, but first let's put some text here so that we know what we're working with. And let's go back to our canvas, and we hit record, and around the 1 second mark here, we are going to take our damage text, go to the color and set the alpha to 0. And so when we play, you see that the alpha just goes to 0 after 1 second. And that's the fade out portion of it. Alright, so now that we have the fade out, let's go over to our animator, click on the canvas, and we have our animator here. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a empty state. We'll call this, actually, we're going to create a new clip and call this the default. And we're going to make sure that the damage text is, the alpha is set to the maximum amount, which is 1, because we're fading out, and so basically when we fade out, the color is going to remain 0, which means we can't see it. So every time we go back to our default, we want to be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this as the default state by right-clicking default, and then hit set layer as default state. And so this will exist on its own over there. And we're going to add a property. We're going to go over to our damage text and add the text color. And so this will basically just ensure that the color is always on. And you can drag it and see that it's just, this is gonna not really do anything, but just make sure that's on whenever it's on the default. So now we have a way to fade our text out. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to need the access to the animator, and then we're just going to play that animation, the fade out animation, once a certain amount of time has run out. Alright, so let's just get rid of the text real quick. So let's we're gonna basically do the same thing here, where we get the text UI by using the get components and children. Same thing with the animator, private float. Well, actually not float, sorry, animator, and then we'll call this damage animator, and we're going to copy that, paste, equals get component in children, and we want the animator. Alright, so we have access to the animator, and so what we're going to do is we're going to create a IEnumerator, and call this damage timeout, and go yield, return, new, wait for seconds. Let's say after 1 second, we'll play the fade out. So what we'll do is we'll start the coroutine whenever we take damage. So start coroutine, damage timeout, but we also need to reset the coroutine whenever we take damage again. So what we can do is we can stop the current coroutine. We're going to stop all the coroutines since this is the only one. So every time we take damage, it's going to stop it, and then it's going to start it again. So now, the last thing we need to do is we need to actually take the damage animator here, and we just need to play the animation, and we called it fade out. Alright, so I made a bit of a mistake. So the damage animator, this part right here, it's going to actually get the component that is within our test enemy. So it's going to get our slime controller. You might not have one right now, but probably there's going to be multiple animators on your character. So this is probably not the best way to do it. So a different way we're going to do this is we're going to be using the damage text UI, and we're going to get the parent of it. So say transform.parent, and then we're going to get component the animator. So this does require you to have the animator on your canvas. So basically we're going to go take the damage text, and then we're going to get the parent, and then we're going to get the animator here. So you could just have an exposed animator in the inspector and just manually set this. It might actually be better for this, but this is just a way so that you don't have to set it yourself every time by going into the enemy script in the inspector and having to manually set it. Maybe you can do that. It's not that bad. So this is just a way we can do it like this, and all your enemies should have this canvas with this damage text. So if you do that, then there should be no problem. Alright, so we're basically going to now test this. Now that we've correctly gotten the right animator. So we'll just hit this guy here, and it's going to fade away. With looping right now, we don't want it to loop. So let's just go over to our animator, our animation folder, damage pop-ups, fade out, turn off loop time. So first what we're going to want to do is we're going to add a little flare to our animation. Well, there's no animation right now. Whenever we hit the enemy, we want the damage to like kind of pop a little bit. So let's go over to our canvas, and then go over to animations, go to the animator. Then I'm going to add a new clip and call this pop. And we'll make this 12. And basically what I want to happen is I want the damage text to increase in size a little bit, then decrease. So let's add some numbers so we can see what we're working with. And then I'm going to hit the record button. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want the text to get bigger and smaller. So I want it to be really quick, so maybe it's like a second frame here. We're going to scale this up to about here. And then we want to copy this frame, the first one, and paste it over here. Just see how that looks. That looks pretty good, so we'll keep that. But, you know, adjust to however you want. And then let's get rid of the text there. And basically, we also want to make sure that the color is the alpha is 1. So we're just going to like move this a bit, and it'll create a frame for us. You can also just do the add property way, but that takes a little bit of time. I just like to click on it and then just move it a smidge, and it'll add the frame for you. And so here we have the alpha set to 1. So this makes sure that even if we fade out and when we tack it again, that the alpha is set to 1. So now we have the pop, and we're going to call the pop, and we'll just make it go back to default afterwards so we don't just get stuck in here. Then we also want to turn off, I don't know why this is in here, but let's move this back to where it belongs in the damage folder. And then make sure you turn off the loop time. So it's just going to go back to the default state. And now all we do is call it. So let's go over to our base enemy script. And then whenever we hit our enemy, we are going to say damage animator dot play, and we're going to play the pop. So every time we hit our enemy, pop will play. So I'm gonna hit him again, hit him again, now he's dead. So now our enemy, we see that the little animation there. Now when it goes away, what if I attack him again? Now the damage pops up again. But we see that it's 50, even though because we basically waited a while and then it goes away, we expect the number to go back to 0, right? So we want to reset that counter. And so when we fade out, when the fade out completes, we want to reset that number. So let's figure out how we can do that. Alright, so how do we reset the number after the number has expired? Well, let's go to our script called animator events. If we don't have this, you can just create one real quick. And all this is going to do is that we're going to create an event in here. Well, we're just going to create a method, and we're going to call that method through the animator. And so basically, all we need to do is create a public void to make sure that it's public, or else it won't show up in the animator event. And I'll show you what that is later. And then we're just gonna call this reset damage. And so basically, this animator event is going to be on the canvas here. And so it has to be on the same game object as the animator, because when we go into our fade out and we add the animator event, so go here and hit add event. Right now it's not gonna show us what we want because of the fact that we don't have the animator events on here. But now that we do have it on there, we'll be able to find our method called reset damage. So let's go look for that real quick. And so let's click on our little event here. And so let's go all the way down, and we see here reset damage is all the way at the bottom. Click on that, and so now at the end of this animation, we're gonna call reset damage. But reset damage doesn't do anything right now, so now's the part where we actually set the code for resetting the damage. So what we need to get access to first is the base enemy, and then we need to go in here and basically turn this damage amount text and make it equal to 0. So how do we get access to that? Well, if we look here, the canvas is a child of test enemy, which has the base enemy script on it. So we can pretty much just get the component in the parent and set the base enemy damage amount text to 0. And so let's do that. So first we're going to create a base enemy, and then we're going to call this BE, and get equal to get component. Wait, first we do game object dot transform dot parent dot get component, and we're going to get component the base enemy. Now that we have that, we can say BE dot, well, first we need to make this field public because we can't access it since it's private, but we don't want to be able to see it inside of the inspector panel. So we're going to do hide in inspector because we don't want to set this in the inspector panel, but we want to access this outside. of this script. So now that we've done that, we say base enemy BE dot damage amount text is equal to 0. So now we'll reset that to 0, and that should be all that we need. So let's try that and see how that goes. So we hit him, and then we did 25 damage to him, so we hit him again, he also did 25. And let's lower the amount of damage that we do so that we can have a better indicator. So we'll go over to our weapon damage script, and instead of dealing 25 damage, we'll deal 10 damage, just so that you guys can see a little bit better. So I'm going to hit him 10, 20, 30, and then it's going to go away, and then hit him again 10, 20, and 30. You can see that when it's fading away, I can still hit him, and then it'll come back and show a different amount. And so that's how you do that. And that's it for this tutorial for now. Later on I'll add some more stuff, but now that we can see how much damage we do, we can move on to adding new features like quest systems. And so that's it for this tutorial, and I'll see you guys next time. I'd like to thank my Patreons Alejandro, Kovian, Bay, Emerson, Kirijo, Polybius, and Yuan. If you want to become a Patreon, you can support me at patreon.com/devbird, where you can join my Discord, or you can just join the Discord in the link description below. And there you can suggest videos or ask me questions, and I'll see you guys next time.